Oh, hey, Alex. How's it going?
Hey, other Adam, how's it going with you?
Pretty good. Say, can I interest you in sewing some buttons into your eyes?
No thanks, but I think you can interest me in this week's episode of the 800s. Hello, everybody, and welcome.
Yeah.
You just heard from my other co-host, other Adam, and I'm your other co-host, other Alex. I have not taken the buttons yet, though. And as always, thank you, hello, and thank you to Alan, our man behind the scenes, behind the curtain, and behind all of our tech. With that, why don't we go ahead and jump into our plugs for the day?
Sure thing. If you joined us for our pre-show, you probably heard a song. That song was Fearless First by Incompetech. Incompetech has a ton of cool scores and audio tracks for every use and mood that you can come up with. You should check them out at incompetech.filmmusic.io. Also, we have a YouTube channel that you should check out. The link is below your video. We are DM's Table on YouTube. So you should check out all the videos that we upload and see if you like any other content we create. If you enjoy audiobooks, you should give Audible a listen. Audible has one of the largest audiobook libraries out there, as well as one of the cheapest subscription options available. If you're interested in giving them a shot, head over to dmstable.com/audible for a 1 month free trial and some free books and stuff. I'm not sure what the current offer is, but it's probably in the realm of at least one free audiobook. Speaking of DM's Table, if you want more info about what we do, you should check out dmstable.com, where you can find out all sorts of things about us, including our Patreon page, which the link for that is also below the video, and our Etsy page, which is dmstable.com/Etsy, which is where we create cool 3D printed stuff of nerd culture and sell it to you, the nerds. So if that strikes your fancy, you should check it out. If you'd like to get a little more personal with us, you could check our Facebook and Twitter, or shall I say X, pages out. That's at the DM's Table on Facebook and at DM's Table on Twitter. And if you really want to get all up and personal with our business, you should hit us up on our socials for our Discord link and join us for all sorts of nerdy chats. On our Discord, we chat not just about books, but about 3D printing, any sort of current nerd stuff going on in the nerdverse, and pretty much anything that you could think about under the nerd umbrella. So you should check it out. Otherwise, I think that's pretty much it for plugs.
All right,
so Alex, why don't you talk about the book?
Will do. So this week on the 800s, we'll be discussing Neil Gaiman's award-winning fantasy horror novel for children, Coraline. Not to be confused with Caroline, as the adults in Coraline's new apartment building so often like to misspeak. Coraline Jones is a curious and adventurous girl recently moved into a new flat with her parents. As she explores her new surroundings, she discovers a mysterious door which her mother claims leads to nowhere. Despite a warning from the odd man upstairs and his mice, Coraline goes through this door and discovers a parallel world made to cater to her every whim. But all is not as it seems, least of all other mother. Good luck, Coraline.
If this is your first time joining us tonight, I'll give you a quick rundown of how our show operates. Essentially, we are a discussion platform. What that means is we will have a topic of discussion up on the stream here. You can see it on the screen right below my picture, where it says "Welcome to the 800s." That'll have our current topic of conversation. Where that topic comes from is Alex, myself, or chat. So if you guys have anything you would like to discuss about the book at any time, feel free to throw it into chat. Alex and myself will keep an eye out for topics or questions worth discussing, and we'll throw them up there once we're done discussing the current topic. Alex and I go back and forth discussing a topic, and then we'll reach out to chat and see what you guys think. So at any time, feel free to type up what you're thinking about the current topic. Throw it out there, and we'll talk about what you got to say about whatever we're discussing. So yeah, that's what makes the show fun is audience participation. So feel free to chat us up.
And as always, this is just a quick reminder that even though today is a children's book, as always, this is a show geared towards adults. We do cover adult topics and content, and while we try not to do too much, swearing does happen. Also, we are trying to create a fun and supportive community over here at DM's Table where people can feel free to share in all of their interests and hobbies and passions without any fear of judgment or anything like that. So in sum, be nice or bug off.
Right on out of this upside down here, y'all. With that, let's get the topics flowing with our traditional starting topic. What were your first impressions of Coraline?
I knew it was like a novel for kids, but I also knew that it was a bit longer than like a actual kids book. So you can feel that, but it doesn't ever feel like it's talking down to anybody. It is just very clear in the descriptions. It is very direct with a lot of things that might otherwise use subtlety. But I really enjoyed that the imagery allowed me to kind of sink into the world very easily. The characters are more clearly defined than you might see in other types of book, in like more complex adult books, but it still had a kind of fun whimsy to it. So like I thought it did a good job of kind of opening it up and giving you a good feel for the world and the characters and where they sat. And with the way that it was set up, I didn't have expectations for like grandiose character growth like we might in some of our longer books, but I felt like I could trust the author to, create a good story with a good lesson and, settles you right in,
Yeah. This story is super short, and one of the big challenges that come with a short novel like this, especially one where you have two unique realms of existence, is how do you make each character impactful in a way that makes them feel real and three-dimensional. And I think that's something that Gaiman is excellent at, and this is one of his peak performances. I personally picked up the audiobook for this that had a whole slew of narrators, so it was a really fun way to experience the story, I think. It also lent extra weight to the fact that there was limited time to introduce each character, and
had a thought and lost it.
yeah. I deleted a thing real quick. But no, I think Gaiman did a spectacular job of making all of these characters not only three-dimensional but super unique, and makes you interested in each of them individually and not just as, oh, what do they have to lend to Coraline's story. And really that starts off right out the gate because Coraline's bored and is exploring and meeting all these neighbors / other tenants. I thought it was he doesn't ease you into his quirky writing style, Coraline. He just jumps you right in there, and hits the ground running.
Yeah, and I think V.S. Drake did a good job of pointing that out. That like this is a massive change from the last book of his that we read, which I believe was around this time last year too, which was maybe a month or two after. But that was American Gods, and I think it shows like a level of care and versatility in his writing style that he like made it distinct without losing something that feels very much like his writing style, you know? And I
Yeah,
think that's exactly what you mean is his ability to bring like characters into that three-dimensional space and make them feel purposeful. You know, depending on how long they're in there, you may get more or less, but it was nice to see. And what do you think of V.S. Drake's comparison of this to being our generation's Alice in Wonderland?
um, I don't think it's necessarily that impactful in terms of Alice in Wonderland level of impact, but I can understand where he's coming from in that it's it's a creepy, cryptic version of Alice in Wonderland.
uh, Not quite as creepy as the messed up version that we read,
Yeah, in
where it was
Alice,
just
yeah.
in Alice. But I can see what you mean. Personally, like I get this like delving into an alternate world. Like I get the parallel there. I don't quite see it the same as like like the having the same impact that Alice in Wonderland did for its generation, but I think it's also because that was not meant to be a kid's book. There's a lot more complex ideas and things that like Alice as a character has to go through. Uh, Coraline's is a much more simplified version, so maybe not this generation's Alice in Wonderland, but a younger generation's like Alice in Wonderland that is also creepy, but. Uh, it was less weird for the sake of weird and more weird for the sake of creepiness, you know?
If we wanna talk weird, let's throw it over to chat's topic right now about the circus.
All right.
What'd you think of the upside down um
The circus
should
performances.
say, well, yeah, let's go with just upside down circus performances.
I thought it was really interesting that that Gaiman or Gaiman, I really don't know which it is. I should probably figure that out. Uh, if we keep reading his books, but I found the circus scenes to be honestly kind of genuinely entertaining as I was trying to
Yeah,
imagine this like from a kid's point of view where the people on the stage were not what they were on the outside. Like nothing was what it seemed on the outside. And it is a good bit of like foreshadowing for the rest of the story, right? Is,
yeah,
especially when like these two women that we kind of are introduced to as being old and kind of, like one's kind of thin and the other one's a little bit stockier, that sort of thing. Like you have these like old woman stereotypes in your head and they like kind of shed it like a cocoon and come out as these lithe performers that have like they live up to the stories that they told. So these people become their stories rather than what they seem on the outside. And
yeah,
I thought that was like it's kind of cool because like that's if I think about it, like that's kind of how I viewed adults when I was a kid. Like they weren't always what they were. They were the stories they told. They were bigger than life sometimes, and sometimes they shrunk down smaller. So it's kind of tapping into that idea, and I thought that was really fun to read through and kind of rediscover a little bit.
Yeah. I think the circus scene, or specifically the two old ladies and the dogs, was a great scene, especially because, like, again, to throw it back to the fact that this is an incredibly short novel. There's 210 pages, and it was not a short amount of time that we spent in this circus. It was something that was had an impact on the story. It really set the um like the feel of this other universe, and the expectation that we should have of what we should expect from the characters in this other universe is,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, you can't just assume everybody's exactly the same, but at the same time, like, you can see a little bit of everybody in their alternate characters.
Yeah, they're absolutely linked, but not necessarily one-to-one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you really hit the nail on the head, along with Stormreed and Beatrice Drake, like the dog being the usher, the shrinking that happens, is it's all fun and whimsical, like the way that a child views like these sorts of events is, but they are not just illusions that we know them to be as adults. They are real, and at least in this parallel world, they are.
Yeah.
And I think it was a good way to foreshadow what's coming, the darker parts, while adding a little fun and whimsy into it that like a kid's gonna like, and that honestly it's fun to read as an adult too, which is like a hard balance to strike.
Yeah.
It was never too complex. It was a little bit creepy, but still fun. Hard line to walk.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the eyes.
All right.
Less of a question, more of a topic. The button eyes and their metaphorical purpose.
Well, I think part of their purpose was this transformation from a person into a possession. Dolls have the button eyes, and they are figures of like that are mimic real people, and that those button eyes are like, I have chosen to become a possession. Like, we don't really find out that that's the case until later, but like it feels like that's at least a part of what they represent. And I think it also means giving up your ability to see reality as well. You are choosing to become a part of this world. You are blinding yourself to reality to live in this world.
Yeah.
And also,
I like that. Yeah.
And finally, like, there's three things that I got out of this. The third one is that the eyes are the windows to the soul. Taking them is how this thing takes the soul, I think, or at least captures them. So, it was a threefold metaphor, which also, like, at least as far as I can tell, I don't know how much of that was intentional and how much of that is me projecting, but that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, I think that's good. I like point 2 and 3 that you mentioned there.
What about point 1? No, I'm just
kidding. Listen, take what you get. No, for me though, like, I think it's a great metaphor for the fact that Coraline felt like nobody saw her in the real world, and in the alternate world, nobody has eyes, but they all see her. And it's like, what does that tell her about herself? Like, is it other people that don't see her, or is it she that doesn't see other people? And I think it's a great way to get a message across about, like, you know, maybe it's not about her accepting the buttons for her eyes, but her understanding that she's not using her eyes as is.
I actually really like that interpretation because it's something that she's very good at exploring and picking up things, but when it comes to people, it's a lot about how they interact with her and the way she sees the world, and less reaching out to see like what they really are.
Yeah. I think a lot of the story is about Coraline learning to see the world through other people's eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whether they be real or button.
Yeah, V.S. Drake says, God, those eyes.
Yeah, and I think Stormmaid also has a point, like with this new world is the way that Coraline sees the real world to some extent. But that plays to the part where this world is literally catered to her, like it is catered to her viewpoint, and she has to realize that her viewpoint isn't necessarily all there is, or even a good thing all the time.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the more horrific aspects of this. So, what part of this book did you find the most creepy or scary or thrilling?
Um, I'd say I think the in if I were in Coraline's place as a kid, I think the hardest part of this whole thing to swallow would probably be the when she realized she was all alone, and she was
Mm-hmm.
like, I have, there's my parents are gone, the cat's gone. The only person that can get me out of this is me, and I'm in way over my head.
Like that sort of like I feel like that's such the adult answer to this.
Yeah.
It's like, what was the scariest thing? Just being absolutely alone and helpless. Like going
Well, I mean, if you
cutting to the deep parts of it, in a way that a kid might not.
like, Gaiman doesn't really go into it much from Coraline's perspective, but like, when you're a kid, your parents being there to fix serious problems is always just a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you never have to worry about things being too real for you to handle, because if they get to that point, you can be like, Mom, Dad, this happened. It's their problem now.
Mm-hmm.
You can always pass the buck on to them. But when they're gone, and like they're gone, like she spent the entire night alone. They weren't there in the morning. The entire next day, they were gone. Like, she was alone. She was completely alone.
I really like that answer. I also really like our other answers here because I think they cover the full range of like these deeper truths about what we fear. To Storm Reed said that chase down the hallway. Like, I felt tension in that. Like, and that's really hard to pull off in like a kid's book. Like, you're like, especially one where you've seen the movie, and in a kid's book you can kind of reliably say, okay, things are probably going to turn out fine. This isn't the original version of Grimm's fairy tales.
Yeah.
So the kids are probably going to be fine, but at the same time, like, it reminded me of another book that I read where, like, but just like that description of this thing clawing its way towards her down the hallway felt very real in the things that Coraline recognized as she's running down the hallway. Like, it felt very like visceral and intense in that moment. So it was, which can only be accomplished through good writing.
Yeah.
And especially in such a short format. And then Via Drake mentioning the being thrown into the cupboard where she found the souls, which is my personal creepiest moment. Is like this, oh shit, like this being is a soul sucking thing that like just keeps stuff, and the like being a lost soul, literally and figuratively, and the stories that these kids told, like that history of this thing doing this over and over again. And yeah, it builds the kind of gravitas for the monster that is to come. And I thought that was like, gets a little lighter when Coraline actually talks to the souls, but like that initial moment, that initial realization is just like,
Yeah. That's definitely a creepy part there.
Oh, why don't I would actually kind of like to do this, follow this thread that Stormreed put out there about finding the souls. What soul did you think was the most interesting to find in the way it was found?
Um,
Like, it can be the place where it was found or the manner in which it was found.
yeah. Trying to think back about specifics. Why don't you discuss yours while I'm thinking here?
um, honestly, I really liked that the first one where she realized that, like, this where the snow globe, basically the first time that she realized that these souls are pieces in her own apartment or flat that weren't there before, these elements that, like, oh, she gets to actually play to her strength, and her strength is like, yeah, she may not be the best with people, but she's very good at exploring. And that was like, aha, I get to use this and see this play out in a way that, like, my strengths have a place beyond me just exploring. And it was really cool to see her just like picked out, was like, hey, that's never been there, and I know this house like the back of my hand. And, um, oh, and seems like Storm
Yeah.
likes the snow globe as well. Did you have any differing opinion on them, or?
No, I liked the snow globe one. That one was cool.
Yeah, and it sets up her finding her parents as well, because she's just like, yeah, I already know where they are because it's the only other thing that didn't exist here before. So again, little bits of foreshadowing that play out right. But it looks like VS Drake has a question for us. Why don't you read it off while I type it in?
Yeah. Uh, when was her biggest growth moment? Um, yeah, I think Coraline, she had a lot of moments in this story where she grew as a character. Um, I personally enjoyed that moment with the man who lives in the attic, who I forgot, the kind of ironic, but I forget his name. um, but that was the whole joke, was that she gave him crap for not knowing that her name was Coraline instead of Caroline, but then she didn't know his name at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh yeah, okay. You're
Yeah, I love
learning,
that.
young one.
I love that last little like we're through most of the story, and then it's like one more little lesson. Tink. You're right there at the end.
Mr.
Mr. Bobo.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah,
Bobo.
I remember that because she's like, I wish I would have been able to say this the whole time. All the times. Yeah. So looks like V.S. Drake really liked that setting the trap for the hand. Which
Yep.
Honestly, that one didn't stand out as much to me. Like, I get it, like, because I don't know. I didn't really see that as the character growth itself, more the result. Like, I guess it was the result of it, but my favorite part of her growth was when she stopped and actually like got to know those lost souls. Like it was both the creepiest. The beginning was the creepiest moment, and one of my favorite character growth is was her taking the time to like actually listen to these things or these people.
Yeah.
And like I think it was because she had that moment where she's like, okay, I have to actually participate in this world, not just let it happen to me, you know? So her getting the courage to even challenge the the beldam,
Mm-hmm.
and her getting the idea on how to do that, and her ability to like it was the character growth for me that set up those other like cascading bits personally. V.S. Drake says to elaborate on their trapped hand moment is that they think that it really solidified her growth, showing that she can bury it all. And for him, it was like that capstone moment. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would agree that um it definitely shows a resolve to move beyond what happened in the other world.
Mm-hmm.
That I think the movie plays on it a little more than the book, but like the whole,
Mm-hmm.
do I want to live in this other alternate reality, or do I want to live in the real reality? And um it's a good moment to show that's like she's willing to face reality, shall we say.
Yeah, and I think V.S. Drake used the right word, capstone. Like it is that like I hadn't really thought about it that way until you guys made me see it, but it is that moment of like, all right, I have learned my lesson. I am ready to move into like I'm ready to take what I've learned here and move it into the real world. And this is kind of the like closing of the book for her, even though it's not the closing of the book for us, you know,
Yeah.
or at least the next moving on to the next chapter. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I like
so that
how V.S. Drake worded it in that recent comment there. There's a difference between escaping and defeating.
yeah, that's a very good way to put it. Thanks, V.S. Drake. I think that's an important distinction that I don't think even most adults know the difference between, and that's like a lesson I think is really good to learn. looks like Stormy says that they think that she wanted to live in the alternate world until she figured out she had to give up her freedom. So yeah, that was like a big moment for her to realize that like it's what you want isn't always worth it when you have to sacrifice so much. And the sacrifice may not be something you see initially. You have to look a little bit further down the road.
Yeah. All right. So what do you think was weak about this book?
Weak?
Where could there have been improved?
Well, it's a little bit hard because like there are absolutely elements I would want more of, but it doesn't make sense in the context of being like a kid's book, Like I'm not gonna say it's a perfect kid's book by any means, and if we're gonna judge it on that scale, there are parts of this that I would think go a bit over a lot of kids' heads. Like this is not like a young kid's book. This is a like I think there's a demographic that this would just go right over. Because the lesson is important, but it's buried a little. It's buried just enough that I think it requires a brain that can peel away at least one layer, to be able to see it. So it's not bad, but it could have maybe been a little more straightforward in some regards. But I'm being very nitpicky about it. Like, also, I think some of the what were the names of them? Miss Forcible and Miss Spink, right?
Yep, Miss Spink and Miss Forcible.
Some of the
the
Scotties were fun, honestly, especially that's another topic, especially around the circus part, but their characters, I know that they were set up the way that they were so that they could be like they could transform from this like mundane, boring, living in the past types of characters to actually living their past lives and being very expressive, that sort of thing. But I don't know, the whole calling Coraline Caroline, and when she corrects them, she's like, "No, you must be wrong." Like that bothered me a little bit. Like I know it as a kid too, but like what adult does that? Really?
Yeah.
Like you're wrong about your own name. What?
That doesn't make sense. That's not your name.
I mean, I'm sure there's adults out there like that, but like I don't know, still felt like moderately unrealistic. But I get it. It's also to show like the frustration of this of Coraline. Also, I think there might have been a little bit more there to do between Coraline and her parents at the end of it. Like, yeah, she appreciates them, but like the fact is, like, her parents were just like giving her dismissive looks and stuff like that. And I'm like, if you want a kid to like leave you alone, you're like, I'm working. You treat them with kindness, right? And the parents were just like, go away, do this other thing. That'll keep you preoccupied. And then she just comes back with that. And then she comes back and she's like, I'm so grateful for that. No, a bit the wrong lesson, but but again, like it isn't even handled that poorly. Like I'm seriously nitpicking like crazy to find anything. How about you?
I took that part to be more like she's not grateful for the way they treat her, but she's grateful that they're real with her. Like it's unrealistic to expect them to be 100% devoted to her care, like the other mother and other father were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there is a middle ground.
Yeah, of course. I think that's what she was grateful for, is that, while she would prefer they pay more attention to her, they aren't fake about it with her. They're like, hey, listen, we've got responsibilities, so beat it.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Well, I get it as much as somebody who doesn't have kids can, so I'll definitely defer to you on that one, as far as like where you need to set boundaries with kids when you have stuff to get done.
Yeah.
It was more so maybe could have said, like, had her say something like, I'm glad you're here and you're you, but like, can we do this sometimes, type of thing, as like a send off.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, just to give, like, because I don't like the idea of kids being like told it's okay for your parents to be completely dismissive of you, while I also do understand, adults have to set those boundaries because we have responsibilities that kids don't always fully understand. So, but again, I think you're right. It's not that big of a deal. It's just I don't know what else to pick on,
For me, the part that stands out is that the beldam agreed to the game for finding the souls, and then supposedly letting her go free. Like, I understand the logic behind the beldam's bored and wants something to do. But at the same time, at that point, all of the leverage was against Coraline, and she had no power in there. So, like, for her to be able to weasel out a way to escape seemed kind of unrealistic. I mean, it kind of turned out that way, right? Because in the end, the beldam was like, "Nah, fuck you. You're not
Yeah, like,
getting
I
out
was
of here."
playing the game because you were supposed to lose, and now that you're not now that you're not losing, I'm going to either make you lose or make sure that you don't win, or
Yeah.
make sure you don't win, or make sure that you don't get out and get your reward. And that feels like something a real monster would do. But yeah, it was a little confusing. That's a good point. It was a little confusing. It's like, why did you accept? But I also think about, like, if I were an immortal dream being, that like, I think I would be bored as hell too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
VS Drake says, uh, calls out the childlike perspective of the story. Brings up the calling Caroline, correcting her, like what we were talking about. Says Mr. Bobo is another example of this. I was like, yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier too, about how Coraline called him out for not knowing the correct way to say her name and ignoring her for it, but then treated him the exact same way that she was accusing him of treating her.
Yeah, that felt like a little lesson bit, but yeah, I think it's kind of like the hypocrisy of children. They notice the slights against them, but not when they do it to other people all the time. Yeah, and Stormy brings up a good point about the beldam. Is like the beldam, I don't think ever from the beginning intended to like follow through on its end of the bargain. It was just like, of course we'll play the game, child, until I get bored or you lose. And yeah, I think it was just a trick from an immortal being that was just like, this will be the way to pass some time. And then it was like, oh shit.
Overall, though, I think it was a really, really, really solid book. There's not There's not really anything that stands out where it's like, so he needed to work on character development or anything like that. Like his characters were solid, the world building was solid, the plot was cool.
Well,
You know what I mean? Are you there? I think we might have lost an Alex. Oh,
ah, oh, I'm back. Yeah, internet was cutting out there for a second.
I was trying to figure out if it was you or me that was cut.
It's got to be mine because it said no internet connection for like 1 second and then popped back in. Anyway, so yeah, I don't fully know what you were saying because I cut out in the middle of what you were saying before too. So, but I got the last bits of it and I do agree with them. Yeah, I was in Wonderland, the other world. Other mother is knitting.
Right. Do we have any other topics of discussion for tonight?
If the chat doesn't, I do. What did you think about the cat as a character?
Every fantasy story needs a godlike creature of unstoppable power who can do whatever the fuck they want.
I felt like it was more like the Jiminy Cricket type of character, like maybe not a moral compass, but like the slightly more adult voice on the shoulder, but that is also still detached from the person so that the kid can still learn their lessons but has a little bit of like free exposition, and perspective, and forces them to take a perspective that they might not otherwise. Yeah, Cheshire Cat is a bit more accurate, except like it's somewhere in between Jiminy Cricket and Cheshire Cat, right? Like just right in the middle there.
I'm on board with the Cheshire Cat idea.
Yeah. And not even
especially
just because
how
it's a
the
cat,
Cheshire
though.
Cat is like, oh, I'm gonna disappear now.
Yeah, not even just because it's a cat. It's just like the attitude of like, I'm here to satisfy my own whims. Why are you here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was like a pretty fun character to add because it also kind of plays as like the closest thing Coraline ever gets to like a foil, where she like there's not really like a true foil in this, but like it sets up a character for her to like bounce ideas off of and that won't necessarily agree because everything else in that world is set up to agree with her except for the cat and the beldam, and the beldam's trying to eat her soul. So
yeah, I guess I can kind of see that, especially like because the doesn't really fear the other dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Like the cat's just like, oh yeah, it's just a place like any other place. Like I can come here whenever I want, and I come here because it's like no other place.
And I can leave there any time that I want, except when I can't.
Oh, man. But no, I liked the cat as a character. Um, I think you know he try not to say it, but I'm gonna say it. he was the wit of the story, right?
Yeah.
He was the guy who knows what's going on and can fill in the blanks without some sort of lengthy side discovery quest.
Yeah, the free exposition.
Yeah.
It is this travel. It is the knowledgeable traveler, right? Like in any
Yeah.
given story, it is the one that like they know because they've been there for a while. They just ignore the problems because it doesn't affect them, you know. And I, I really like that sort of thing for kids' stories too, because it also is just like, who doesn't like a familiar, right?
Yeah. I think too
And
the cat is one of the first moments where Coraline realizes kind of like the cat starts out kind of like, I don't really care about you. I've noticed you, but I don't really care about you.
mhm,
Coraline kind of realizes that she has to show kindness to get kindness.
mhm.
I think that was a good turning point for Coraline's growth.
Yep, I agree. Stormy had said, "Give me the key," and I don't know if it's because I'm tired or what, but I am blanking on the significance of that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like I know there's something to do with like, didn't the cat keep the key for a little while, like so that Coraline wouldn't have the key? There's something there, and it's like on the edge of my mind. Um, Oh, V.S. Drake, though, is a chaotic neutral character. Absolutely. Um,
Yeah. He does what he wants and he doesn't care.
all right. Hopefully we'll get a little more clarification on the key thing. I'm really sorry, Stormy. Like, I really want to know, but I'm just blanking on it. It'll probably haunt me for the rest of ever until I finally figure it out. Um, anyway, I think that was most of what I wanted to cover. Did you have any other topics, or does chat have any other topics that we can go over before we get into final impressions? Like, I know it's a short book and we're probably not going to be going long, but we're trying to keep
Yeah, we're
keep
almost to the
everybody
hour mark
involved.
already anyway, so.
Yeah, and but I want to make sure everybody else has their turn if there isn't.
Yeah, Storm,
Yeah,
she needed the key to open the door, but we weren't sure what you meant by specifically calling out the phrase "give me the key."
yeah. I know I think the cat asked her like to hold on to the key for some reason. I don't remember if it was to hide from the Beldam or if he was going to unlock the door for her. I vaguely remember her having like not knowing whether or not to trust the cat with the key.
Yeah.
Or with
Okay,
some.
I've got one last topic for us to go over real quick.
All right, we'll make it a quick one then, and then get into
I
final.
forgot I almost forgot to bring it up. I can't believe I forgot. It's something we haven't done in a while because I don't know, just the books we've been picking haven't really lent it to this question, but this one kind of does, though I doubt we'll ever get a sequel to it. Is
Mhm.
Coraline in the real world or in the alternate world at the end of the story?
At the end of the story, um, I think she is in the real world. Not even because like we don't have the very obvious signs like no buttons. Um, but there is a moment with like I think there's a moment where she like realizes like she sees a glimmer of something, and I kind of had that thought too of like, is that like some of the fabric tearing away, and she's still stuck there. But like the glimmer was more of like a like she treats it as a like that's what used to be. That was where these worlds overlapped. And I know better than to touch it type of thing. And that to me was enough to be like, okay, like this is the girl who she's gone through enough where I think I trust her as a character to know whether or not she's in it. And I think that speaks to the character growth, because beginning of story Coraline, I would not have trusted to know the difference. And it also comes out with the way that she like interacts with the people too. Like when she finally learns those lessons and she gets to see them as people, not as figures in a world, like passive figures. How about you?
Yeah. I think she's in the real world, but I do think it's supposed to be kind of like questioned.
Yeah.
Did she make it back? Because, when she was crawling away, when she was making it across the dimensions, she loses track of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Did she make it there? Did she get flipped back into the alternate world and it was just recreated by the Beldam to trap her in a new fantasy of a better scenario where the Beldam now understands that Coraline isn't somebody who's going to be taken by the idea of being able to escape?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one of the things that Gaiman did really well on, is leaving that kind of questioned.
Slam the door. Open. Actually, really like the idea Stormreed put out there was that like they believe that she'll be tempted to return to the alternate worlds with this new knowledge. Like I do like that idea that the temptation is still out there, right? That little bit is like, just because you've dealt with it this time doesn't mean that it's gone. V.S. Drake didn't even have that cross their mind, which is totally valid, because like there are a lot of indicators that it's gone, and it very well may be. But I kind of like the idea that like it's an immortal being. It's not like she killed it. It's just she escaped. Yeah,
yep.
Very good question. With that, though, why don't we wrap things up and get into final impressions?
Yeah. So for me, this book was solid AF. It is not a huge investment in time. It's really well written. The characters are all really well developed. The world building is super. It's super creepy. But in a way that's like, if you're not mature enough to understand, it won't be as creepy, which is kind of a hard place to land. So kudos. I don't think my kids are personally old enough for this one, but maybe someday.
Oh.
Sorry, real quick, last thought on it. One of the things that I thoroughly enjoyed about it is the overwhelming number of uncertainty about what's going on with this other reality. What's real, what isn't real. The idea that everything is kind of in question really lent to that dark fantasy genre that Gaiman kind of dipped his toes in with this children's novel. I thought it was really well done, and this would definitely be a would recommend for me.
Yeah, and it's not the first time Gaiman has like dipped his toes in it. Definitely like the first time I know that he's done it for like a children's book. But if you if you read
That's what I meant.
Sandman, like it's definitely a theme.
I didn't mean Gaiman is dipping into dark fantasy for the first time. I meant this book is dipping into dark fantasy.
Oh, okay. All right. My bad. Before I get into my final thoughts, V.S. Drake agrees with your recommendation, like that. They believe read it to your kids, which I would think that's what you were addressing when you said it as well.
Yeah.
Is so with some discretion, depending on what your kids can handle, especially when it comes to horror, because nobody wants the nightmares. Stormreed's even having trouble like seeing it as a kid's story at all, and that's because there's a layer, there's a nice level of like complexity to like the world building and stuff, and it's so well written that like it's hard to see it as like a kid's story. I think it is like an older kid's story, maybe 8 and up or so, where they can have enough knowledge of how things work. And Stormreed also sees it as a little creepy, but don't we all have an alternate world in our imagination? Which is fair enough, and it's definitely not always bright and sunny there. As for my final impressions, I honestly was pleasantly surprised at the balance that was struck between making this accessible to kids, but also not talking down to the target audience, which allows it to be entertaining for adults. I wouldn't call it super creepy, but it has super creepy moments. The world seems vivid and well thought out. It is self-contained enough that like it doesn't expand beyond its own means, but it is bigger than the world that we know and strikes that balance as well. Could have maybe made some of the adults a little more realistic, but maybe that was intentional because the adults were meant to be unrealistic in the way that children's expectations of adults are unrealistic,
Yeah.
I thought it was a fun, light, entertaining read. I am glad that this stands alone from the movie. I would say the movie is definitely creepier, but I think there's a depth to the book that the movie doesn't quite hit in some ways, especially when it comes to like the kids with the souls. So ultimately, I think it is worth reading even if you've seen the movie, which is why I made the comparison. And I would absolutely recommend it to both adults and kids who are like, especially kids who like to read. Like this is a book for kids who like to read, for sure. Or if you want to like give them a book that you think they might like, and if they even remotely like horror stuff and fantasy stuff, definitely recommend.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, and those are my final impressions. So why don't we get into our final announcements? Take it away, Adam, with our books that are to come.
Sure thing, Alex. Next up, for November 25th, we already know this one. That's A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. It's recommended by Alex, so it's going to be a new one for me. I'm sure he's read it before.
Yeah, this was our Thanksgiving. This is for our Thanksgiving theme, so books that we're thankful for. This particular book is one that I read in the midst of the pandemic, and it kind of, along with my co-host and this show, helped me through a pretty rough time.
So yeah, I'm sure that'll be a good. I'm sure that'll be a good discussion, especially on Alex's side as he enlightens us
as to how
more details on that.
I'll get into some
and good time for it.
All right, and for December.
Yeah, December 16th is going to be our December book. So a little bit earlier in the month than we're used to, kind of halfway instead of near the end. But the book of choice will be The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. it's gonna be a new one for me as well. So
Yeah,
it's good
it's
stuff.
one that I've been meaning to read for a while. I believe it is the first book in the Discworld series, which is kind of like, must read for anybody who's like really into sci-fi, especially if you like comedy sci-fi, which with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy being one of my all-time favorites, I kind of felt like needed to be on the list. So I'm glad that it won our redemption month, which is what December is, and coming up for January, we are going to be doing our books that we're thankful for. So, not books that we're thankful for. That was Thanksgiving. It's our New Year's resolution books. So
Yeah.
Books that we have we've resolved to read, either books that have been on your list or books that are about New Year's, things that are related to your own New Year's resolutions. So we'll have that vote up for you guys for our next show.
With that.
Oh, we also did you have any side hoes this month?
Side reads, side novels,
side pieces.
Any side pieces? Yeah. I finished Mistborn Era 2. So between last show and this show, I read all 4 Era 2 novels. I gotta say, the 4th one was a knock out of the park. Excellent novel by Brando Sando. I'm surprised. I'm sure you guys are all surprised that I loved a Brando Sando novel. But
Who would have guessed?
Looks like Storm read a book, Lincoln Lawyer.
Ooh, yeah. That's I know there's a TV show based off of that now. I hope the book was fun to read too. I know for my part, I finished reading the 5th season. I can see why it's got the hype. It is a very similar style of world building to Brandon Sanderson. Very similar. Character development is a bit different, and that's what makes it unique. Something I plan to continue the series. I definitely would recommend, especially for those of you who want like that Brando Sando feel without necessarily having to always be reading his books. But it was an interesting read. Starts off a little bit slow, but definitely picks up and has a lot of interesting elements. And I also read, I aside from rereading already next month's book. Whoops. I also read Bram Stoker's Dracula just for Halloween.
Nice.
So trying to knock off some of the classics because I know what the premise is, but I actually read it out this time, and it is still interesting. It is still a fun read. It is not your Twilight's vampire book. So
no way.
But it's good for that. Some of it doesn't hold up because it's as old as it is, but the main elements absolutely do.
That's one I've been meaning to check out eventually. I don't know when I'll get to it, but eventually.
Someday. All right. With that, I think we are free to wrap up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It was great having some participation. We always love more of that. So,
thanks, V.S. Drake and Stormreed, for your comments and chats.
Mm-hmm. And to all of you, we'll see you next book.
See you guys later.